Hello and welcome to Knights at the Game Table. We're here at Pat's Games in Austin, Texas. I'm Kevin.
I'm Arya.
And today we're here with 3 big Guilds of Ravnica predictions for your deck.
To keep up to date with everything at Knights at the Game Table, all you have to do is click subscribe and then hit that tiny little notification button next to it, so every time we upload a new video, YouTube will be sure to let you know.
Arya, where are we starting?
We're going to start with number 3, which is that graveyards matter. Because in this first set in Ravnica, we have 2 guilds that both care a lot about graveyards.
That's the, I can do this, that's the Sultai? No.
It is Sultai.
It is
yes,
Sultai.
It is
Together
Sultai.
they're Sultai.
Together they're Sultai,
It's the
yes.
Golgari and the Dimir.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, I'm learning.
Together would be Sultai, but we're not on that plane. We're in Ravnica, so they don't combine here. But they do have a lot to do with each other. So you have the Dimir deck, which is going to be black-blue. Their mechanic is Surveil, which allows you to look at your top card and put it into your graveyard. To me, I think it's a lot better than Scry. It's the same ability as Scry, but instead of going in the bottom of your deck, it goes into your graveyard, which I think is like much better for a lot of reasons.
I mean, in all kinds of formats throughout Magic, your graveyard has been a lot more useful than the bottom of your deck.
Yeah, and even in this set, I mean, you have cards that have Jumpstart that are blue, that you can cast from your graveyard, and then of course your Golgari mechanic is Undergrowth, which counts the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So Surveil actually really helps both of those a lot.
And what does Undergrowth do itself?
Well, Undergrowth is different for each card. Basically, it'll have an effect based on the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So like there are some cards that there's one card that gives -X/-X for the number of creatures. There's another one that'll put counters for the number of creatures. So the Undergrowth ability is going to vary on the specific card, but all of them have in common is that they count the number of creature cards in your graveyard.
And get more powerful accordingly.
Exactly. So in a way, it's a little bit like Dredge, which was the original Golgari mechanic, and that is like one of those words everyone hates hearing. That was when they want Golgari to care about graveyards because that's kind of their thing as a guild, that's their identity. But Dredge was just not the right way to do that at all. It was way overpowered.
Let them put the whole deck in the graveyard.
Yeah, it was an overpowered and frustrating and uninteractive ability. Whereas Undergrowth is a similar sort of thing. It cares about being in the graveyard, counts the number of creatures in the graveyard, but it does it in a way that's a lot more balanced and a lot more interactive with your opponent.
Awesome. What are some of the more exciting cards with that mechanic that you've seen?
With Undergrowth, definitely the removal spell, Necrotic Wound, which is 1 black for a card that gives -X/-X, equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. And then it actually, I believe, exiles their creature as well. It doesn't go to their graveyard, in case you're playing some sort of Golgari mirror. I think that card has a chance to be very, very strong. I could even see that being a card that would get played in like a modern or even a legacy Dredge deck, because it basically will be 1 mana exile anything in those decks.
Pretty good, right? Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, but so I think that card has a chance to be very strong just because it's 1 mana. It does take a lot of setup to get cards in your graveyard, but I think that's one. Another one is actually one of the mythics in this set.
Izoni Thousand-Eyed.
Izoni Thousand-Eyed, yeah. And that is I believe a 6 mana 2/3, which doesn't sound that exciting on paper. But when it comes into play, you get a 1/1 token for each creature card in your graveyard. So if you're able to like fill up your graveyard with creatures, I mean, if you play that,
1/1s?
yeah, if you can get like 8 to 10 1/1s, that's a lot.
That's going to kill your opponent a couple of times.
Yeah. So I think that it is an ability, Undergrowth, that requires some amount of setup, but I think that there are some payoffs in this set that do make it worth it.
Awesome. Let's move on to number 2, the removal spells. Now, this is as much about what we're losing with the old rotations as what we're gaining in the new set, right?
Yes, because for the last couple of years, we've been very spoiled in Standard because we had Fatal Push, probably the best 1 mana removal spell ever printed. Maybe Swords to Plowshares is up there too. But I mean, the fact that you had a card that was printed recently that's in the conversation with Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, and Lightning Bolt is huge. Fatal Push, that rotating out changes a lot. But we're also losing some other ones like Abrade, which was a great card, could destroy an artifact or heal 3 to a creature, nice flexibility there. And cards like Unlicensed Disintegration that were removal spells with upside, all that stuff's out of here. That stuff's gone, so it's going to be interesting to see how just one set is going to replace 2 full blocks full of removal.
Okay, so what are we going to get in the new set that gives us some removal?
I think the one that's probably going to get played the most is going to be, is it Lava Coil, I believe is the name of this card?
Lava Coil.
Lava Coil, which is 1 and a red for sorcery, I believe, that deals 4 damage to a creature and then it exiles that creature if it dies. Kind of like a bigger magma spray, if you will.
That's a very big magma spray.
It's a very big magma spray, but I foresee that card getting played a lot, especially in like a white-red deck that doesn't have access to black cards and black removal. That is going to be a key card, especially given that there's cards out there like Steel Leaf Champion that are 3 mana, 5/4. Getting that extra damage to get to 4 outside of like a Lightning Strike, I think is going to end up getting this card, you know, played in some decks.
That's nice. Remove from game, an effect that could be relevant for a set that's got some graveyard matters as well.
Yeah, definitely could. I mean, between like having the Undergrowth effect and you know, taking a card that would be adding to your Golgari opponent's Undergrowth is now exiled, you know, out of the game. Plus, there are also some decks that only play so many win conditions and maybe trying to return them at some point, especially with cards like Find Finality, which is the sort of Wrath effect that can give -4/-4, where the flip side, the other side of that card, is return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. Being able to exile one of that deck's threats that would be playing this kind of control deck that would play Find Finality, basically making Find into an irrelevant card makes that deck and that card a lot worse.
Because they have so few creatures to bring back in the first place.
They're typically going to have limited win conditions, and they're going to probably try to return some of those win conditions with Find. And being able to use the Lava Coil to get that card out of the game entirely, that's probably pretty good too.
Nice, nice. We're also getting the much talked about Assassin's Trophy.
Yes. You know, no discussion of the set is complete without it because it's really that important. That card is going to make a huge impact, I think, both in standard and in older formats. And it is a nice thing to have, but it's really not a replacement for like Magma Spray that we're losing, for Fatal Push that we're losing. All of these really strong 1-mana removal spells, they're all gone. So maybe it's time for Llanowar Elf to shine. Who knows?
Fingers crossed if that
Fingers
wicked
crossed.
Goblin Chain Whirler stays out of the way.
It is true that Chain Whirler is still an issue, but you know, the fact that like if your opponent wants to kill, you know, destroy Llanowar Elf for 1 mana, at this point they're limited to pretty much just Shock.
That's true. So
and Shock is much worse than Fatal Push or, you know, Magma Spray.
So you're now going to get your mana acceleration out of your elf, even if it does get taken out in a couple of turns.
Yeah, I think so. I think Llanowar Elf surviving for at least 1 turn is much more consistent now, given that Fatal Push is out of the picture.
Interesting. And how would you say this is going to affect decks and colors in terms of access to removal? I imagine the black decks are going to maybe have to play green with Assassin's Trophy now?
Yeah, I think between the mana fixing and the dual lands you have access to, I think Assassin's Trophy is going to be in a ton of decks. It's going to be in decks that splash black just for the trophy. It's going to be in decks that splash green just for the trophy. Because the card is so flexible, it's so powerful. Yes, there's a downside, but when you look at the fact that basically 4 sets left standard and only 1 set entered to replace them, the whole format got much smaller. So the number of good removal spells went down quite a bit. So now we're looking at maybe splashing removal, where before we had a lot more options.
I see. And REA, bring us on to number 1.
Number 1, the biggest thing to look for in your deck out of the new Ravnica set is going to be that your deck is probably going to be more than 1 color. We have seen in the last year or 2 in Standard, mono red be huge with cards like Hazoret. We've seen mono green Steel Leaf Champion decks be very prevalent. The decks are really just played, you know, mono-colored, maybe sometimes splashing a second color for a handful of cards. But when you have access to Shockland mana bases, and Ixalan and Dominaria have given us all of the check lands as well, I think you're going to see a lot more 2- and 3-color decks than we've been accustomed to seeing for the last couple of years.
Which 3-color deck are you most excited about?
I think that's a kind of a 2-part answer. I think in the short term, right now, today, I'm looking mostly at Sultai, which is the combination of Dimir and Golgari. But I think looking ahead a little bit to when the next set comes out, I think there's a really interesting chance to get maybe a 3- or 4-color Teferi deck, where we get when we get Hallowed Fountain, and we also have all of them in play, and they print some more cards. I think there's a really good chance we're going to see a very cool 3- or 4-color control deck centered around Teferi. The problem is today when this one set is out and we don't have Hallowed Fountain, I think it's a lot less likely. But I think that's one on the horizon for sure.
Stomping Ground, another big one that we're looking forward to in the next.
Yeah, for sure. Stomping Ground, lacking Stomping Ground this time around means that Jund, which is traditionally, every time we've had Jund as an ability, which is green, black, red, when you have an ability to play that deck's almost always very strong. Because those three colors get so much from each other. Red and black bring the removal. Green, gives us the threats. Like cards like, if you recall from the past, like Huntmaster of the Fells, Bloodbraid Elf, all of these cards make Jund decks very strong. Once we get the next set of Shocklands and we have Stomping Ground, it's going to open up all of those color combinations.
Something to look forward to.
Yeah, but for now, you know what? I don't mind. I'll cast my Assassin's Trophy just fine off of a basic or two. I don't mind.
Yes, indeed.
I do not mind casting that card. That card's awesome.
Well, thank you for joining us on Nights at the Game Table. We'll catch you next time.